QuickBooks Desktop 2021. Is this the first time you're using QuickBooks? Then this video can help you in starting your company. The best time to start with QuickBooks, of course, is January 1st. That way you can enter all of the transactions for the entire year in QuickBooks, and you'll have a record for the entire year. Sometimes this is not possible. Sometimes you're starting QuickBooks in mid-year, and you may have been using some other system, an Excel spreadsheet, for example, for the earlier part of the year, and now you're ready to migrate over to QuickBooks. If you're doing the second method, say it's April 30th, and you're starting to use QuickBooks, you'll need to get a trial balance or a summary of what happened during the first third of the year. So let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and start and assume that we're a new company, and we're going to do the Express Start. Now, we could do other options. For example, there may be a create from an existing company file. Perhaps there's some other person or entity that's been using QuickBooks in your industry, and they already have the customer list set up, the vendor list set up, and the chart of accounts existing. And so in order for you to avoid having to re-enter all this data, you can actually create a brand new company, that information, not so much the numbers themselves, but the addresses and the names from an existing company. That's not our case here, so we're going to be using the Express Start. And we're going to pick a company, let's call it a plumbing company. And what industry are we in? Well, first of all, why is QuickBooks asking you this? They're looking to try to help you. They're looking down the road towards what chart of accounts that you're going to be using. And what is a chart of accounts? It's a list of items. It's a list of what your expenses are going to be, what type of expenses you're going to have. So, for example, the plumbing company may not have travel expense or overseas communications expense. Yes, they would have local travel, but not, say, long distance. So they would not need an account to keep track of that. So basically, QuickBooks is trying to streamline the list of items that's particular to your industry. So let's go ahead and have them help us choose which industry we're in. And here's construction trade, here's plumbers, okay? Also, for example, it may be that we're repair and maintenance. Maybe we don't do a lot of installation of, say, furnaces. We're just out there maybe cleaning the furnace. So that would be an option. Let's go ahead and take the trade, okay, and we'll say, okay. And so now it's going to set up a chart of accounts for us in the background. And the next step for us to decide is, well, what kind of entity are we? Why is this important? One of the beauties of QuickBooks is once you have your accounts ready for the year, you can actually take those numbers and flow them over into your tax return. So rather than having to re-enter all these numbers by hand, the information can flow right over to the tax return. But you have to tell it what kind of tax return you're using. Each one of these entities, for example, a corporation uses an 1120, an S corporation uses an 1120S, a partnership uses a 1065, and of course a sole proprietor uses a Schedule C. Why don't we just pick S corporation just as the example? And here you would enter your federal ID number for the S corporation and the business address. Why are these things important? The federal ID number, of course, would be used at the end of the year when you go to send out 1099s, so that when it's printed out, and yes, QuickBooks will prepare the 1099s for you, then this information will already be there and can be printed directly onto the 1099 form, and that's very helpful. Also, your address, this kind of information, when you send out a bill, it will populate that address on the invoice that you're sending out to your client. So we're going to go ahead and create the company at this point, and this will just take a moment. Now, while we're doing this, one of the things that we have as an option is that it will give us an option to start to input some of the vendor's name and the customer's name and employees' names. We, at this point, here we go. This is where we have a chance to actually enter this information. The bank account information we can add there also. The other option is just to start working. Let's go ahead and we can go ahead and enter the vendor information and customer information here. But I think once you see it's a little bit more easier, there's another screen or other screens that we can enter this information that I think will be more productive. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and start working. And then here's basically home base. And this is an overview of where you are. And let me go ahead and get out of this. There we go. We're back to home base. And so basically, to give you a little overview of home base, over here in the lower right-hand corner is basically all you need to be as a cash basis taxpayer. And what is a cash basis taxpayer? They record the revenue when the check comes in the door, when the mailman brings that envelope, and they record the expenses when they actually write the check. Other over here is the payable system, all right? And these are when we're actually sending out an invoice. That's when we report the income, not when we get the check, but when we actually send out the invoice. And up here, we enter the bills. Now, we may have gotten the bill, but we haven't paid it yet, see? And we haven't actually written a check, paid the bill, but this is the payable system. In other words, we record the expense when we get the bill. We don't wait till actually we write the check. Now, to go back for a second, we talked about chart of accounts, didn't we? And if we go here, we can go down the page and look at chart of accounts, which is right here. And you can see that it is already set up. What it feels is the accounts that the plumbing company will need, all right? So one of the first questions you're going to have is, well, oh my goodness, I have a cash account and I don't see that here. So let's go ahead and take an example of how that works. We would go down here to the account button, add new, and here it is, there's the bank. We would hit that button and go continue. And the account name is, and notice here that's the type of account, it's a bank account, isn't it? So we're going to call this the First National Bank, all right? And then the other information we can put in the bank account routing number if we want. And you'll notice this tax line mapping. Remember how I talked about before how one of the benefits of telling the QuickBooks what kind of entity you are is because it can roll over or flow over the summary, the data into your tax return. Well, this is the mapping. This is where it's telling this brand new account where to put this information on the corporate, the S corporation tax return. It already knows it's a cash account, and so we're going to save and close that. So we're adding an account now, aren't we? All right, so we like that. Now, one of the things it's asking, hey, do you want to go ahead and sign up right now for the bank feed service? And what is the bank feed service? This is where you have an opportunity to automatically download the banking information right into QuickBooks. For today's talk, we're not going to get to that point, so we'll leave that for another time. We'll say no. I want to also talk to you about, well, maybe there's certain things that we don't need on our chart of accounts. So, for example, maybe I don't really need workers' compensation insurance. All I really needed was insurance expense. In other words, I don't need all of this detail. So I can go to workers' comp insurance and go to account, and I can delete this account, all right? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And are you sure? Yes, I am. So now we've seen an example of how we can add to the chart of accounts and also to delete to the chart of accounts. So this gives you a very good idea about how to get your company started. The other options that I wanted to mention to you is, remember we talked about entering the information for customers, and we can do that through the Customer Center. And this is, for example, where we would add a new customer. And so that's a new customer job. And also, if we go to vendors, vendor center, we can add a new vendor. And so these are all things that are available to us and the various information that we need to go ahead and get started to get your company up and running for the new year. The other information here, there's always a help question line that's available with QuickBooks. You can always put the help and get some additional information that way. I hope this has been helpful for you, and let's have a great day and get our QuickBooks up and running.